Hey guys, it's Amy at Zoe Beck, and I'm going to do a book tag today. So I was tagged in this about 2 months ago, so I'm catching up on my book tags, guys. I'm a little behind. So this one is the My Pleasure tag created by Steve Partridge. I will have him linked down below. I was tagged in it, so I need to get this done. So this is a tag that uses a few of life's pleasures as prompts to suggest books, poems, novels, nonfiction, etc. So I'm going to use the prompts and talk about 7 books that I really enjoyed that I think answer these prompts of and again, most of these books I've read this last year, but you know, there's some that are not, so but I think it's pretty cool. So anyway, so prompt number 1 is think, a book that made you think hard. And I'm going to say Chernobyl Prayer by Slavanya Ilikovic. This I read in January and it just blew me away. This was one of the best nonfiction books I have ever read, and I've gone out now and bought some of her other books because I'm hoping they're going to be just as good. So this has to do with the Chernobyl disaster and the people who lived in the area right around there, and telling their stories of the ones who lived there at the time, those who have left, some who have stayed, some who have moved into the area, or you know, how the area has changed. And oh, it was so impactful. Like it was just, it was so much information and interesting because it was told in stories, like someone's narrative. Like, so they would just, you wouldn't hear the authors, the reporters, the journalist side. You would not see her questions, but you would see the person, how they talked about it, and it would be their voice on how they reacted to things. Some of them were only a small little paragraph, and others were pages long of their story. And it was just so interesting. And again, it did make me think, and just there's so much stuff I did not know about. Because again, I was a kid when it happened, and I remember it happening, and I remember a lot of the fallout stuff, and I remember stuff about it, but I don't remember getting so much as what happened there, because I don't think we were allowed to see how bad it was there. And so it was so good. Prompt number 2 is love, a book that broke or mended your heart. I had real hard trouble thinking about this because I don't know how to, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of books I love and stuff, but one that broke my heart or mended it. And I picked The Clay Girl by Heather Tucker. I read this last year and it was phenomenal, and I really enjoy this because the main character does make you feel, and she reacts in ways that I would not, and she dealt with situations I don't ever want to deal with, and did it in such a way that I really enjoyed this book, and it was all the emotional feels for me. I mean, this was pretty much a 5-star book for me, and I really, really enjoyed the story of the young girl who has to deal with her father committed suicide in front of her and her sisters because he was caught molesting them. And it goes on, that's the very beginning, and then it goes on with the aftermath of the family and how her and her sisters are split up and then brought together, and with her mom and the situation with her mom and her new stepmother or stepdad, and things just, oh, there's so many things in this book, but I love the way it went, and I mean, I just love the journey of her, and hearing her story from her perspective, and Ari was just awesome. So again, I would say that this broke my heart because there were so many things that were just so painful, but she just persevered so well that I really enjoyed that book. So prompt number 3 is Eat, a book that nourishes you. Now, I had a real hard trouble thinking about this one because I'm like, well, what nourishes me? Like, I had to think about this because I read a lot of all different kinds of books, and I'm like, well, what do I pick up that I would say nourishes? And I decided to go back to my English degree and say, well, you know, I really do like classics and finding new authors and new books that I didn't experience in school, which I'm still not, like, in college. Like, how are some of these, like, I've never even heard of? And this one I actually had heard of, but I had the wrong impression of it. But I read The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins this last October. So in Victober I read this. And this was phenomenal. I loved this story, and it was nothing like I thought. You know, I had A Woman in White. I just assumed it was like a ghost story. And I don't know why that image is in my head, but it was. And I'd never known anybody actually had read this book until I was here on BookTube. And I'd heard of him, of Wilkie Collins, and I knew he has a lot of books. I just had not read any of them. So by reading this, I am really amped to read a couple more of his books. I have one standing by and I want to buy a couple more. So, but again, this book was really a major mystery and not sure what's going on, and it's twisty turny, you never know, and it's huge. I mean, it's huge, but I would say that it's a good huge. Like, this is one I fell into and I just devoured it, but I also, like, it, you know, enveloped me. It was just awesome, and I thought for that's why I picked this for the Nourish prompt this, because I felt so revived on reading other older stuff that I don't always get to all the time because I'm reading newer stuff and I'm reading more genre fiction. But to go back to my roots and just read something that was written a while ago but still is so good, and I would recommend that one if you have not read that. It's pretty good. Very good. So prompt number 4 is Laugh, a book that brought a little comic relief. So I'm going to pick up probably the funniest book that I read last year. And again, it was one of my favorite books of last year. And that's Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. This was a great fantasy book. I love this book. And the main character, Clay, again, is like my favorite character, one of my favorite characters of all time. He just is so good. I laughed my way through this. It was really funny because it's this fantasy series about these older men who used to be in their prime, were called Saga, and they were this mercenary band who could do, you know, go and kill all the monsters, and they broke up because things happened when they were younger, and then they go on to their own lives, and some of them don't age so well because it's like 20 years later, and some of them are a little more run down than others, and it's great to see them trying to get back into it because they're out to save one of the guys. His daughter has become a mercenary now. She's in trouble, so they're going out to help her. And this is just a great story. I just love this story. And so to me, it just made me laugh because they were so funny. And that was something I really enjoyed. And again, it's a fun one. So the next book is like is a companion book to this, but so you could really just read this standalone. It was really good. I really enjoyed that. So number 5, Sex, a book that explores or contains sexuality that doesn't make you cringe. So I had to think about this because I've read all different kinds of romance, erotica, you know, paranormal romance, like a lot of different romance, like stuff with sex. I don't really think I've read a couple nonfiction that probably has to do with it, but I don't recall much of that. So I'm just going to pick one of my favorite series. And it should be no surprise that I pick a paranormal romance series that I reread all the time. And Nalini Singh is one of my favorite authors in this genre because I think she handles the relationships and sexuality so well. And again, it's a fantasy world. It's not ours exactly. You know, it's like just twisted enough with a few, like this one has angels and vampires and archangels and stuff. And it's not us, but the stuff in there is relatable. Other than the fantastical elements. But I think the relationship stuff is, they bring up good, important themes and people who have back histories that are not been pleasant. And I think that she deals with the sex very well. And I think that it's plausible, whatever, like, again, it's fantasy, so I'm not saying that, but I just said, these are ones that I don't cringe about. I don't go, oh no, they wouldn't do that then. I mean, they make sense. Usually it's not in an inopportune moment. Usually it's the downtime and it usually makes sense. At least even in a fast-paced urban fantasy paranormal romance book. So anyway, I'm going to mention that one. I don't know. That was a hard one for me. Well, all these were. Actually, these are really good questions, Steve. I've had a real hard trouble on all of them. So prompt number 6 was Rest, a book that gave you peace, reflection, or just calms you down. This one was super hard too. Like, I read a lot of stuff. I don't know. So I had to really think, and I decided to pick up a book that is not something I read all the time, but she is one of my favorite authors that I need to go back to her. I have a lot of her books that I haven't finished or that are sitting on my shelf. I've taken a little break from her, so I need to go back to her. But this book is still my favorite one of hers. And it's one I read when I don't, like, again, it's not action-packed. It's just very sweet. And I think that's what I like about this. And that is The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie by Jennifer Ashley. And this is one of her Mackenzie books that is, I think it's the 1800s. And they, it's got the romance and it's got the dukes and the lords, and I really love this series. This is the first book in it, and I don't think it was not the first book I picked up by her, but it was when I did finally pick this up. This is definitely my favorite of hers, and for me, this is very relaxing. It's a very, because it's very sweet and the love story is there, but there's also some mystery and there's also a lot of stuff going on family-wise. Like they're a very close-knit family, but nobody, because they're, of course, they're rich and they're scandalous, So I don't know. It's just it's a good historical romance. I really enjoy this series, and again, this is one of the first ones that had what I would consider, or what is considered an autistic main character, and I thought she did him really well, and I just love the way that this was done. I mean, I think the representation is good, but again, I'm not an expert. I don't know a whole lot about it. I just thought it was done well, so I'm hoping everybody else, other people agree, but I thought it was. So I really do enjoy this book. So to me, that's kind of a relaxing read to do. And then prompt number 7 is Experience, a book that introduced you to a new subject or shifted your perspective. So I'm going to say Frankenstein in Baghdad by Ahmed Sadawi. This book totally opened my eyes to something it's not my experience on what it was like to be over in Iraq in the mid-2000s, and to be on, an Iraqi in Baghdad at that time, while there was stuff being blown up all the time. And I thought that was the most eye-opening part for me. Again, it's one of those things where you just don't think about if you have not experienced it. And I mean, I remember from that time period seeing so much stuff on the news, but it's not the same. This was written so well, even though that's just part of the story, that's not the main story. It's in there talking about just the danger of living there, and I think he did a really well. I mean, I think that came across really well in this story. Now, again, this has to do with Frankenstein, so there's a little fantastical element in here, which I enjoyed. I think it was kind of fun. But to me, again, the most impactful part of this was seeing what it was like there from somebody, I don't know, that I had not seen it that way, and I thought it was really well done. So I'm going to go with that one. So anyway, so that is all the prompts. That's all the questions. I made it through this. Yay. And again, thanks Steve for tagging me. So I'm not going to tag anybody because I'm a little behind on this, but if you want to do it, let me know that you've done it. It's a great tag. Really made me think. I had to really concentrate on what I was going to talk about. So I think it's a really great tag, and I've liked some of the other people who have done it, their answers and stuff, because it's all different. Everybody has their own experiences and ideas on these things. So anyway, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.